Toyin. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome,
How are
awesome.
you?
I'm doing really good. But I just want to, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a little while. I want to let everybody know about you, the amazing work that you're doing. So everybody, I would like to introduce Toyin Messery, and she is the CEO of Nazaru, an amazing company she's built from scratch, and she's a powerhouse right now, especially within African business. As a female, as an African woman living in the diaspora and doing business all about trade of Africa. And with that, she's got a conference called Trade of Africa that we'll talk further about. But I think it's really important to highlight some of the background to learn more. And that's why I really wanted to bring you on board, Toyin, so that we can learn a bit more about the woman behind this business. So with
Okay.
that said, please let me let you introduce yourself and tell me a bit more about your career as well as part of that.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to connect with you and your followers, right? And so for me, 15 years ago is when I moved to the US, and I moved here to pursue my graduate program. So Masters of Science in Information Systems. And after my master's, I went directly into corporate America, developing technology solutions, global solutions. And I've worked in most of the business functional areas, so manufacturing, procurement, sourcing, and then most recently, I worked for Walmart in the retail space. So for me, my career has been technology, but more about how do you use technology to run your business, and then to run, global brands really. So I'm for me personally, one of the unique things I try to do is to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and that has allowed me to kind of move within corporate America and do amazing things that most people would not even do in corporate America. So because I'm always curious, I'm always learning, and I'm the one that would say, I want that project. Be on that project.
That's amazing. I mean, coming from one of the biggest powerhouses in the world, being the US, and the industry they have there, and the amazing businesses and businessmen and women that are in the US. I mean, could be quite intimidating, I guess, stepping into that. So for somebody like yourself who has had an amazing background, you've been working in tech, as you said, and recently in retail for the giant that Walmart is. Why now focusing on business and African trade, and just why Africa?
Yeah, well, so one of the things about Walmart is a fantastic and an interesting company to study. It's
Mm,
number one, so Fortune 1, but the company culture is one that is well grounded in servant leadership. And, they also create a space where one of the things we say is bring your best self to work. So even while I was at Walmart, I wasn't doing what most of us do, where we come in and we only bring the side of us that we're being paid for. Meaning, you're paying me to do technology, I'll only do technology, and you're not going to see another side of me, which is what we do. But I went through this entire process where I realized that this is a global brand, and they've created an environment where whatever your passion is, you can actually live it out while working for that brand. So when I was in Walmart, that was where I led women initiatives, right? I was the leader for the Walmart Working Women. So we were driving, making Walmart the best place for women to work. And
awesome.
in addition to that, my passion for Africa was a conversation that I was actually having within the corporate space as well. So that's one of the unique things about, working for that large company is, you know, they've just created an amazing culture that allows you to be your true self, not just for your technology skills or your strategy skills, but tell us who you are and bring yourself to the workplace. So that's something that was fantastic, and I took advantage of it. But what then happened was my dad passed a couple of years ago, and that led me to make greater commitment to Africa. And then once I started going down that path, my passion started growing bigger, bigger, bigger. And then I had to make the decision to say, I really want to focus my time on my passion. And I also want to do amazing work. One is growing faster than the other. One is pulling me much more, is pulling my heart more. And then, so I made that decision to actually resign. And my leaders supported me. So I'm still very much in touch with my leaders, and they're following my journey right now. So yeah, so that's it. In the, it's also encouraging people to say, wherever you are right now, don't hide your passions, don't hide your identity, especially for us immigrants, right? We stay safe, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying go all out there and start not doing your job, but I was doing a fantastic job. I was delivering results, but I also had the ability to connect with other women, with other people. And the company had attracted the most brilliant minds in the world.
Wow, and you're one of them.
Yes.
You're one of them, obviously. Because wow, I mean, they
Yes.
do support your work and what we're seeing, in your, which we'll talk about in a moment, but in your events and your programs, you have Walmart supporting you. So I think that's a very key message to kind of spread out there, is that even when, because I had that the same, I used to work at C&A, which is another one of these big independent retailers, international retailers, I mean, and because of my relationship I built with them, because the work I was building with them, they sponsored my conference last year. And it is really in 2018, it is really important to, especially in your industries, to don't burn bridges. And I think that's what you do. Bring your best self to work, like you're saying. Connect with the right people. Bring something extra, and then you'll still continue to get that support when you build those strong foundations. And that thing, I need to salute you on that. So with from Walmart, I know you had these conversations that you said already with Africa, and then the passing of your father that brought you back to the continent. So what message are you trying to spread now regarding African business, as this is the focus of the work that you're doing?
Yes. So one of the things also is the reason we get support is when people see that we're authentic, right, and we're transparent, and they can feel that we're actually passionate about what we're talking about. So that also is very important. So the key messages are: one, there are several stakeholders. We have to identify, what stakeholder am I? Am I an investor? Am I a diaspora trying to reconnect with the continent? Am I a buyer? Am I a seller? Right? So the stakeholders that we work with are different. But the first thing is Africa. When people hear the word Africa, in their mind could be war, famine, disease. Yeah.
You don't see that image of they versus us, yeah.
Yes, but it's one of the key messages. 1,000,000,001 people cannot all be at war, cannot all be fighting disease, cannot all be hungry. Like, dog, think about it.
In 54,
So
55 countries, come on, we can't all be.
yes, yes, yes. And so the first thing is just getting Africa in people's minds
Yes.
as a commercial destination.
Okay.
In business terms, not in the terms of charity. I
Mm.
think that's the foundation. And you see that across the work that I do, is bringing the conversation on Africa as a commercial conversation. And that's where the word trade comes in. Let's talk about Africa not in foreign aid, but in trade, movement of goods and services. And my background in the world of Walmart, I haven't seen the world of global trade at scale, and seeing that that's actually how wealth is created. Right? Right. If you're trying to grow your economy, it's either you're selling something or you're buying something. Like, it's back to the foundation of trade, buying and selling. Now you could be buying or selling services, it could be infrastructure projects, it could be construction work, it could be, fashion, it could be, you name it.
Yeah.
But yes, so at the very foundation is the whole point of buying and selling. And then looking at, what does that value chain look like, and who makes the most value from what process in the value chain. And
Yes.
then realizing that the continent of Africa primarily sits at the bottom, raw commodities, nature's resources. And then, how do we inspire people to actually walk through the entire value chain and add value? So for me, it's looking at it from, okay, we're not talking about help Africa. We're saying commercially, if you're looking at India, you're looking at the value, in the technology space that India represents. If you're looking at China, you're looking at the manufacturing side. If you're looking at Latin America, you're seeing Latin America as an investment destination. Then why not Africa? Like,
It seems to be now today, all eyes are on Africa right now.
rightly so, but why did we wait this long?
Whoa, hey. Wow, what can I say? That kind of leads to the next question in regards to the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Africa is very unique, and we know in good and bad ways it can be very unique. But then most continents can be. But what challenges have you found for the businesses that you're working with when they're setting up in Africa? What kind of challenges are they coming to you with, or that you yourself are dealing with?
I think there's a misconception that just because we say trade with Africa, that we're saying it's easy.
Mm. Far from it.
Right. So that,
Far from it. Okay.
and people thinking it's easy, and people thinking it is immediate.
Oh, please.
Exactly, right? If you're trying to build a business here, how much effort do you put into it to build a business in America? Well, get ready to put in the same or more effort if you're trying to build, right? So that's the first two things you have to really want and make sure people are prepared for. Guess what? The other thing is, even if you want to go to Africa, be ready to fight because you already have competition, China,
Oh,
on the. So for me, a lot of the work I do, yes, it's glossy. People think, oh, Toyin, but behind the scene is where we actually talk real conversations and transactions. To say, if you're a construction company and you want to win bids in Africa, you're not just going to throw, oh, Africa, come to me, I can do this better for you. No, 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 no. There are 5 people sitting outside the door of that person that is going to write your bid. And those 5 people are from China, and they are permanently stationed right there in that space for the entire year.
very
So
true.
if you as an American brand wants to now enter into that market, what would you have to do? Or how do you have to position yourself to win that kind of, to win that, so that leads me to one of the things I say is American brands, American investors now need to start thinking of Africa as a customer.
Okay, very interesting. I like
Yes, because
that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yes, because the growth potential of Africa is massive.
Yeah.
The continent is going to double over the next 30, 40 years to 2.2 billion people. You
Yeah.
know, middle class is growing really fast. There's an affinity for Western products.
Yes.
So really for brands that want to export in, and then for brands that want to export into Africa or export from Africa into Western regions, both those numbers would increase over the next couple of years.
Yes.
Cars will be bought, computers, cell phones. The youth population is growing faster. And one of the interesting things is, think about more babies are going to be born in Africa. So brands, Pampers, diapers, baby products, you better have an Africa strategy. So those are the real conversations that we have behind the scenes. Yes, go on, please.
No, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm just hailing you up over here because you're speaking such truth, and I mean it's interesting. Yeah, you're saying about the people think it'd be easy or people think it'd be immediate. I mean, especially me myself working in fashion, immediate is not even that's a demand from customers in the West. But when it comes to Africa, they have to embrace slow fashion for more than one reason. And I encourage that because, well, a lot of the people in fashion are now moving towards slow because they encourage that. But the big conglomerates, they want things fast, and they expect that from Africa. And it's like, come on, we have to think differently. But the interesting point that you raised was competition. And that's a very, very smart message to share. Competition. Most don't see that as a challenge. They don't see that. They wouldn't add that. They'll talk about electricity. They'll talk about exporting and shipping, and of course corruption. Of course, all these negative things about Africa. But they don't think about the competition that they're going to have as a business with everybody else who is effectively scrambling Africa. It's like the new scramble. And let's just talk about that before we go into the other things in regards, because that was a good topic. And regarding, because it's something that I am very conscious about. Working in fashion is not just about the retailers wanting to manufacture in Africa, but many are looking at, they're coming to me to say, can you help us to sell our products to Africans and tap into that growing market of African-born Africans on the continent and diaspora Africans traveling back who want the same sort of lifestyle they had back in Europe or the US, they want it in Africa, and just generally, like you said, that growing population of people and the young continent who are going to want particular things. Can you see the challenges there? Can you see, because I also see that, again, the scramble and how that can then, let me, you describe your side of that, because I've got mine, but I don't want to,
So when I use the word competition, there are two sides. There are brands on the continent trying to enter into this market. Yes. The conversation around competition is different from the brands trying to go from your side or US to the continent. So let's start with, Western brands going in.
Yes.
Western brands cannot compete on price. Okay? They cannot compete on price on brand, but they can compete on their branding, on the storytelling, on what they're bringing in terms of luxury goods or a lifestyle brand. Mm-hmm. That will win like that. Like if you go head to head with China as a Western brand in Africa, you cannot win on price. No. But if you can win on lifestyle, because you're saying a lot of diaspora have gone back, they still want to have the same lifestyle they had in London and Chicago and all of those places. Those are the people you want to market to, which means that your pricing strategy, your marketing strategy, your branding strategy in Africa must be on point. And how many brands are willing to put in that effort?
True. Very true.
So that's it on the Western brand. Similarly, for African brands that are trying to break forth, oh my gosh, there are so many hurdles, right? Fundamentally, letting them realize the cost of doing business in the West is far more expensive than doing business on the continent. But your consumer, you have more affluent consumers that you can target. Now, when you're bringing in your product, make sure the quality is on point and make sure there's a storyline tied to your product.
Yes.
Right? Storyline. So what will happen is Africans cannot also compete with China in the US. But think about a movie like Black Panther. The storyline sold $1 billion and several more merchandises around Africa. So Africa can sell. The term Africa can sell. So it's all about the strategy and breaking down the customer segment, like segmentation. So for me, I break it into three. There's the Africans. I draw like a triangle, okay? The base of the pyramid, middle of the pyramid, top. At the top of the pyramid is a smaller population where you can target Africans, first, second, third generation Africans. That want to, they're not in Africa, but they want to eat the food, they want to wear the clothes, they want to wear the shoes, and they want to wear the head wrap.
Yes.
That's a natural first segmentation of consumers. The next down, which is a little bit larger, is at the African Americans diaspora.
Yes.
They're trying to reconnect. They would buy. And then at the base of the pyramid, those people, I would say, friends of Africa, people that they have adopted kids, they travel, they're well traveled, they want the exotic feel of Africa. That's another customer segmentation. And how you market to all those three will be different. So there's competition, but that's how you can break down the competition, is understanding the consumer segmentation.
Mm-hmm. I'd also add that there's also, especially in Europe, from a European perspective, because obviously there's a big diaspora in Europe, which slightly different connection than the African Americans. If we're talking about African Americans born in America, rather than somebody like yourself who would class as African American, but you're born in Africa. So
I'll put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say Blacks around the world that do not know anything about Africa, meaning they've never stepped on the continent.
Yes. Compared to the ones who go back and forth and visiting families,
yes.
When they get their Ankara, they'll get all that. Yes. So
I know how to find my way, right? But people that there's a connection, to the continent, but that connection is very loose, but they are actively seeking of ways to rebuild that connection.
Exactly. Absolutely. I was at a conference recently, and we had one of the biggest wax print houses out there called Velisco. For those who don't know, the Dutch brand who produce the majority of the wax, aside from the Chinese who are replicating it. It's a whole other discussion. But just of late, they're doing. They announced that they've been doing a lot of work, especially with US, because exactly this big movement, this big call from the US. This whole the year of return for 2019, and this big kind of reemergence of African Americans connecting to Africa. So wax print for them selling to the US market is another big market for them. So go figure.
Yes,
this is the time for this go to the US. They're African products, so do it.
That scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
Explain that. Because a lot of the work I do is trying to see how Africa can benefit from the value chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But because we've not developed the wax prints industry locally in Africa, the value chain will bypass Africa.
Unfortunately.
So let me give you an example. Black Panther. When Black Panther came in, there was a huge demand for the African jewelries that were being watched, they used in the movie, for the swords, for all the outfit. But guess where those things came from? China.
Yeah. China was killing it. They still are.
So when you think about the retail world, it doesn't really care where products comes from. Anybody anywhere can say something is African and slap Africa on it, and it could be produced anywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
So when you now think about the youth population, how do we create jobs for the youth? If the Africa theme isn't producing on the continent, but it's selling, that's my son.
All right.
So sorry.
Next generation.
Yeah. He wanted a game and he couldn't wait. He came to grab his game. So when you think about the youth population, right, on the continent, how fast it's growing, we need to start thinking about where are the jobs? How do we create the jobs? What industries would emerge, right, for those jobs?
Yeah. It's like hundreds of thousands of young people are going into the job market every year. And is there on the continent, is there enough jobs to support them? So, it is like, I agree, when you're doing African fashion, or any business in Africa, thinking about how you can your business can create more jobs on the continent as well as you exporting or whatever you're trying to do in your business. How can it also influence and build jobs on the continent. It's part of the SDGs, we know that,
Mm.
and it's part of the I believe part of the big five that the African Development Bank have. And we find that there's a lot of companies, don't you see it as well? A lot of companies are now doing like accelerator programs and investments, like Alibaba, for example, who are doing these investment programs with African youth, particularly for entrepreneurs and the youth market for those Africans on the ground. Just heard about a Switzerland government, I believe it was Switzerland, who have put some billion they're giving to the African Development Bank in order for them to for entrepreneurs as well. So there's lots of people investing. They have their own agendas, of course, but a lot of people invest in African businesses or African entrepreneurs, especially in the tech industry, your background, because that's a huge area as well in countries like Kenya, in particular Nigeria as well. So yeah.
Yes, so I would say take the money and run.
Run, Faris, run. Yeah.
Take the money, but make sure you use it, you know, well. And that's where the challenge of the political leaders, that come into to say like, how is this money used? But never mistake that for growing your economy. None of those things are in place to grow any economy. In fact, okay, let me give you a background. Most of the industries, they have some rules that those contracts that emerge from those foreign aid, it's their local citizens, at least 50 or more % of that must go back to their own private sector. So the money really doesn't travel into the banks of the receiving party. The execution piece of the money would come in, but the rest of it stays in that economy. To be honest with you, it's another way of the US private sector winning bids from the US political side to come and execute those bids in Nigeria or Ghana or Rwanda.
It's very complicated, and I've worked in international development for African development organization, and when you read about these bids and what they really like, who's getting what, and it's so complicated, and it's not, that money's never what you really expect or really think you have.
And it shouldn't be. I mean, nothing is free.
No, exactly.
We have to realize that. Like, even as Africans, we have to send this message back home. Nothing is free. When somebody knocks on your door and is bringing you a bag of whatever, you've got to be smart.
You do.
But because culturally, Africans, we are naive and we are simple. Okay, people, I don't want your followers to read this wrong. Naturally, we are simple, we are warm. We're welcoming people. In our own culture, we bring bags of yam and this, we exchange things without any ulterior motive.
It's the village mentality, though, isn't it?
Village. But we have that trust inside of us that has been abused and misused for many years. Meaning, just because we do it as a community and that's how it is, when a foreigner does it, we are assuming that they are abiding by our principles. That's what I mean by naive. It's the reality that, I also say something around, there are three markets that I think about. There's the local market, there's the regional market, there's the global market. Okay. If you are operating at the local level in Lagos, Nigeria, you cannot bring your own mindset and the negotiations you do in Yaba, you cannot bring it into the global market and start negotiating with that mindset. Even the price, what things go for at the local level is different from what it goes for at the regional level. It's different from what it goes for at the global level, and they have their own principles and legal sophistication. So the simple-mindedness of the transaction happening in Aba market in Nigeria or in Accra, Ghana, that exchange When you move into the global market, you're talking about trade financing, you're looking at all these instruments and this complicated paperwork and import documents and all of these things that are like, oh my goodness. So those are some of the things we also have to educate our own people to say,
Yes.
you've got to get smart. You cannot apply the same principles that you're applying locally. You cannot apply it when you're trying to export.